Play at Novabet.
Hello and a warm welcome to another edition of the Irish Angle in association with Novabet. As usual, I've Emma Nagle, Johnny Ward here, and we're going to look back at all the big events that took place last week. Emma, Johnny, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Now,
Thanks, Vinny.
Let's start off the big one, City of Troy. You were expecting that, Johnny, were you?
Well, I suppose if you were Emma and I and everyone else was in Ballydoyle a few weeks ago, you probably should have been convinced by what Aidan was saying. And I was in two minds really all day. Like I thought it was a run-of-the-mill derby, apart from one horse who Aidan basically said was well superior to everything else he had. And it was a question mark of what went wrong at Newmarket. And I was at Wexford on the day of the races, or tomorrow rather, and I was talking to people there and did the odd interview, and I said, what do you make of the derby? And everyone was saying it was an unbelievable training performance from Aidan O'Brien. But I'm actually not sure even Aidan himself would say that. I think he would look back in the Guineas and say, like, what mistakes were made there. And it would make me rethink back in any sort of Ballydoyle horse in the Guineas who's considered a derby prospect, because this horse has so much ability. Like, the way he went through the field from Tattenham Corner was extraordinary. You rarely see that. You might see it in the race where a horse has tons in hands in a handicap, but it was extraordinary what he did. He was drawn one. He didn't break all that well. Ryan Moore was almost happy to let him break a little bit slowly, to just let him relax. And the fact that he beat sort of, pretty much the second and third favourite in the race in terms of form and expectation was very encouraging for me. But I do wonder what happened at Newmarket, because it was an inexplicable performance when you look at how good he is. But I didn't have a bet in the race, to be honest with you, but I found the whole thing exhilarating. It reminded me of why I got into racing in the first place. Unbelievable performance. Unlike the Gus Roda, and I don't expect this horse to be in and out. I feel that he'll just go on now. And it's funny, I was talking to one of the stewards before racing at Tramore, and he was telling me how when this horse made his debut at the Curragh, he watched him as he passed the line, and he kept watching me. He said he's never seen a horse in all these years watching races, he's never seen a horse after the line so strong and so difficult to pull up and so fast after the line. And that's the City of Troy you saw as a 3-year-old. He only gets going late in his races. And I thought it was exhilarating. Can't wait to see him run again. And the fact that they're talking about running him in Saratoga, I actually love that idea of him potentially trying the dirt, which may or may not work out. If it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. He'd be a European stallion full stop. But I thought it was an unbelievably good performance.
Yeah, I agree. It was a great race to watch as well. Emma, just from your point of view, did you listen to Aidan? He says it in every sentence, doesn't he? Listen. I didn't listen. Did you?
I did listen. I was getting sucked in more and more. I think I said it kind of this time last week. It was kind of hard not to be drawn into the confidence around it. My probably biggest question about him was, would he stay the trip? Because he was so fast at 2. Then the draw came out, was it on Thursday or Friday? Friday morning, was it? Thursday morning the draw was, and John won, and more doubts again about him. I think only, was it 2 horses since 1970s had one king draw one, which made it more difficult again for him. But like, it was absolutely kind of breathtaking, the performance. I thought your eye was kind of drawn to him the whole time. He walked, like Johnny said, he didn't break particularly fast. Thought he was quite keen, doing it plenty early on, but he just cut through the field. I think kind of made a few comments last week saying it maybe wasn't the strongest derby, but like, looking at the first 3 home, it probably was the best result, I suppose, possible. Like, the 2 behind him, 2 kind of impressive derby winners, or trial winners, sorry, who kind of came in there with relatively big reputations, and yeah, he made them look fairly average, I'd say, and it's really exciting to see where he'd go from here. Like, I think the plan originally was Guineas, Derby, and then over to that dirt race that Johnny mentioned over in America. I don't know, I'd be surprised if that plan might change slightly now. Like, you'd imagine they'd have to try and maybe go for the Eclipse. To be honest, I really have no interest in seeing them going to the dirt for that race in Saratoga. Like, maybe try the Breeders' Cup Classic later on in the year, but I mean, I'd love to see him go for the Arc or something like that, because I think he's a kind of a special horse, and he's one that kind of gets your blood pumping. And look, maybe that's just me being biased, but the American stuff doesn't excite me maybe as much as the prospect of an Arc or Eclipse or something like that. Because I think he's really special, and I think you just have to trust in Aidan from here on out, don't you? Because he never kind of let down his confidence on this fella. And some people maybe saying that the trip maybe improved again for the trip, but like he's so fast at 2. Like I think any trip would be absolutely fine for him. Even if you saw when he hit the front in Epsom, like Ryan even commented, I think, that he looked green. Like he changed his legs a few times and he just kicked away again. It was really taking, and kind of one of those performances that really gets your blood pumping. I think like the flat this season maybe a little bit deflating. That's being a bit harsh, but he's kind of the star that we kind of needed to emerge, I think.
Yeah, and as I said in my blog earlier, we'd a poor start to the flat season from an Irish perspective, but my God, it didn't half light up over the weekend. We had the Oaks as well. Azalea. What do you make of that one, Johnny? Dermot Weld, 75 years of age. He's still at it. Incredible. And Chris Hayes gave that some ride too. Well, of course, he had some horse under him.
He had, he doesn't look 75, DK, it must be said. And I'll let those who are not in the Racing Writers WhatsApp group, a little secret. There was a photo on the IrishRacing.com website of DK and Aidan O'Brien. I think it was on Friday, and I said, how do you caption this? And it's rare you'd have a photo of the two of them together. And all my years racing, and long before that, they have been like at the top of the tree in Ireland. And I've said on previous shows, I think that that we're not in a dominant position relative to English racing on the flat at all. Sprinters were miles behind, and in the classics this year we're really struggling. So including our home classics. So this was a great weekend. I did like that filly from the day she won her maiden. I was there that day, and I got a good vibe off her. It was a very, very good performance, and it was interesting as well. Again, went into the Derby with the season almost like hanging in the balance, because like his horses were so disappointed, I thought, in the Oaks. Particularly Lang was very well fancied, and she's probably a little bit better than she showed. But Dermot Weld, all those years after Blue Wind, it was just a class weekend between like the Hannah Smullen and her winning a race for her the week that her weekend her dad was honoured in another race, and then Aidan O'Brien win the classic with a horse that good, and Dermot Weld all those years later winning the Oaks, and Chris Hayes, well, I think is one of the most popular guys in the weighing room. It was a fantastic weekend, and imagine the two of them lined up in the Champion Stakes at Leopardstown.
Yeah, or the Arc is the other thing. What do you think, Emma? Azalea looks like one for me for the Arc. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think that probably sounded like it could be the plans. I was reading a story about her on the site. There was it yesterday. It went up, and I think Dermot mentioned giving her a kind of a mid-season break and then going for, I think there's a Group 1 over in France that Tarnawa won, and then going for the Arc. 3-year-old fillies have quite a good record in the Arc, and he likes to do things on the big stage internationally, Dermot Weld, and yeah, I think she'd be very, very interesting if she went for it. Probably not the most impressive filly physically. She's fairly small, but interesting. The first two home in the Oaks, I think, both by Dubarry, breaking that up kind of fairly emphatically. But yeah, she was really good, and it's brilliant to see. I think 43 years on since his last Epsom Oaks winner. I think Chris Hayes' first UK Classic as well. But just noting Ylang, I think there was this bit of news around her. I think she tore muscle quite badly during the race. So even to run the race that she did, considering that's probably a big enough thing. But I'd say she'll be out for a little while. But kind of considering how she disappointed, and maybe the other Ballydoyle filly as well, Rubies and Red, she obviously drifted massively on the day. I was fairly disappointed in her as well. Maybe not the strongest Oaks, but the winner could go on to do nice things, and a nice little boost for Navan form earlier on the year. Purple Lily was only beaten, I think, less than a length by her, and she went on to run a nice race in the Guineas. So probably a couple you could take out of that race now.
Yeah, you talk about horses drifting there as well. But the other one on Friday was the Coronation Cup. Emily Upjohn, that was some drift. 8-11 out to 7-4 for a horse that had danced in the same race 12 months earlier. Anyway, big performance from Luxembourg to win it. Johnny, that was a good ride from Ryan Moore.
Yeah, it was class. Like I fancied Hamish, but he was 25-1 at the declaration stage. I thought it was a mad price, and I couldn't back him as the price came in, because I'm terrible for once I miss a price. I tend, and if I can't get the bet on, and then the price halved, I generally just leave it alone. So kind of had no bet in the race. Didn't fancy Luxembourg, to be honest. Don't think he's that effective over the trip, and it was a masterful ride by Ryan Moore. And the market's incredibly accurate, like in racing. I can never get my head around how accurate the market is. Like the drift on her was alarming. The drift on Rubies or Red, I think, would basically apply. Like Rubies or Red went into the race with a 2-figure rating, and I was delighted with how she travelled. I backed her at a good bet in her each way. I think she's probably just not that good, to be honest. She she couldn't pick up at all, and I'm delighted that there was an excuse for Lang. But Brian Moore, absolute masterclass for ride. Like, I think any jockey would practically have won on City of Troy. Not any jockey would have won in Luxembourg.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. One other thing to look at around Epsom was the Derby day attendance, 27,000. I'm shocked by that, to think how low it is compared to what it was when I was a young man first into racing. The Epsom Derby was the pinnacle of everything, the biggest race in the world at that point, bar none. And now look at it, 27,000 people at a race like that. The Irish Derby was getting crowds bigger than that only 10, 15 years ago. Emma, is there a reason for it? There obviously is, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around it, really, because for the, I suppose, most famous, biggest flat race, what's claimed to be in the world, probably not anymore. Like, the crowds were pretty disappointing, especially on the Friday. Like, it looked really, really empty. Even on Saturday, I think 27,000. Like, it must be kind of a combination of factors. I was kind of looking into it a bit, and kind of the big stick out thing for me has to be the price of the tickets. Like, just looking on the Epsom website there, I think the cheapest enclosure was obviously where you can actually get to see the horses. I'm not talking about the ones kind of down the garden or whatever. You're kind of only out there for a day or then. But, like, if you actually wanted to go see the horses and the parading and stuff, the cheapest enclosure was £65, €75, which seems kind of extortionate, really, like, considering people just don't really have the money to go and do that kind of thing anymore. And like, looking at in comparison to the Irish Derby, like, in fairness to the Curragh, you can kind of go in and go wherever you want. You can stand in any part of the stand and sit down even, and it's only 20 quid, I think, to get into the Irish Derby, 15 your early bird ticket. But the price has to be kind of a big one, but, like, there has to be kind of more to it than that. Like, the figures that were kind of floating around from the crowds they used to get in years gone by, it's kind of hard to believe how far it's fallen. And yeah, I'm not really sure what the answer is, but it kind of must be a combination of factors. But I'd say price must be a big one.
Yeah, the Irish Derby as well, even with those fantastic prices, as you mentioned, that's way down on what it used to be, that you can get a ticket for 20 quid to the Irish Derby. It used to be double that or more at one point. But they're not going to get a crowd either, are they? Looking back at the Guineas, the 2 Guineas days recently in the Curragh, there was only 5,000 each day turned up. The Derby itself, they might get 10,000, I suppose, if they're lucky, but that's about the max they'll get. What's the answer to it, Johnny, or what's gone wrong with the Derbies particularly?
The Curragh one, the Epsom one for me is the fact that, like, there's a lot of there's a proper cost of living crisis, in my view, in Britain, and people do not have disposable income like they used to go to expensive race meetings. Like, and that's partly it. Maybe partly, like, Alan Sweeten wrote about this racing's place in the general narrative is alarmingly low actually now, in terms, it's very hard to get publicity around these events, and for whatever reason Epsom isn't getting the crowd, but that's consistent with a lot of British races. Well, I think a lot of British people just can't afford it, and they choose to do other things because it's very expensive. It's very, very expensive. Like, if you were to get the train as well, like, we're blessed in this country. Like, public transport is dirt cheap, and if you went to the races as well, you're getting in for a lot of people will get a ticket, and if you pay for a ticket, it's not expensive really. It's not the case in Britain. Like, I'd love to go to Epsom, and maybe I'll go next year, but I'd say, like, to get a train even from London, which isn't that far away, then go to Epsom, the whole cost would be very expensive, even if you were living in London. The Curragh for me is the more interesting one, because I feel that the Curragh absolutely has to make a strong case for getting the railway station back. Now, the fees that I were there and are talking about are incredible. Like, it's literally incredible. There was a station halt there about 20 odd years ago. It's on the line. You have the train line serves everywhere from Kerry, everywhere from Cork, everywhere from Galway, everywhere from Waterford, everywhere on the Dublin line. So it's from Dublin, you could make the Curragh a massive excursion, and it could have its own actual carriages going to it if you market it properly, because the Curragh is a beautiful racecourse, and all the money that was put into it, it's really the only racecourse in Ireland that feels proper modern. It's a beautiful racecourse. As I say, they need to get the railway station back. I spoke to Brian Cavan about this a few years ago, and he was talking about potentially having a park and ride at Curragh for commuters to Dublin, which is another big thing, because trains are getting extremely popular now. There is expanding because they're very affordable. People can work on them, and to make the Curragh, like, if you go to the Curragh and you can't have a drink because you have to drive, it takes away the attraction for a lot of people. For me, the Curragh needs to be marketed more, because the crowds are alarmingly low. Like, and I felt bad. No, I didn't go to the Guineas weekend. I couldn't particularly go that weekend. I had something on, and I felt bad because I love going to the Derby. It's one race for myself and my girlfriend go to, and her father. and we go to the Derby or the Champions Weekend. I love going to the Curragh. I think it's the flack it gets is completely unwarranted. But for me, the Curragh really needs to make a massive effort to target businesses, target kind of corporate days out there. Just target like people who have money in Dublin, particularly come to the Curragh. It's not far away. It's a brilliant day out. And I'd be worried about the crowd there, because I think the money that was spent on HRIs in front of the Oireachtas, I think, is that this week to talk about the cost overlap. It's alarming that they can't get more crowds.
I actually feel kind of sorry for the UK racing fans in a way. I suppose like we're kind of lucky with the pricing of the races here. Like I think the most I've ever paid to get into a race meeting here maybe 40, 45, and even that might even seem expensive at the time. But we're lucky here. We can we pay really 40 quid to get into the Irish National, for example. But you can go anywhere with that ticket. There's no kind of limitations. But like looking at the prices for like the big UK, maybe flat meetings in particular, I think the jumps is probably pretty much the same. Like if you were a big flat fan in the UK, like you're probably going to have to make a choice of which meetings you actually want to go to, because there's not an awful lot of people who can really afford to travel and buy clothes and pay for tickets and drink and food and side isn't going to be cheap. Like if you're going to the Guineas, you want to go to Epsom, you want to go to Royal Ascot, you're going to have to pick and choose where you actually want to go. Maybe people had to just pick and choose between maybe Epsom and Royal Ascot, and Ascot's probably going to win on that occasion, probably more of an occasion around that nowadays. And yeah, I could never really wrap my head around the prices of these UK meetings. It's kind of hard to believe. I think we're very lucky here as well. Even though some people might still complain about prices, I think relatively we're not doing too bad here.
Yeah, one other thing, Vinny, that's I think, and I thought the Curragh would be ideal for this. You should have somebody in the paddock, like who's basically on the public system, talking to connections all throughout the day, like breeding of horses, paddock like experts who can say like this 2-year-old looks absolutely smashing today. The damn one first time out. Talk to Aidan O'Brien before the race. Have a roving mic. Make going racing something unique that you don't have sitting on the couch, because it's so easy. The amount of people I know who love racing who practically never go racing is alarming. And it's still a great day out, but you need to make the experience a proper experience for those there who feel that they're benefiting from that time between the races, where they can go up to the paddock, but they can also be informed stuff that you wouldn't get on the TV.
Yeah. The other thing I always thought there was they should do something about the betting tax. There should be no betting tax on track and betting tax in the shops, which is what there used to be years ago to a large extent anyway, a big differential between the two. So there was an incentive to go racing because you were getting better value is the bottom line. Now you're not necessarily. You get better value at home because you can get bonuses off online bookmakers and all the different things they do. They give you money back if you're beating a short head and if your horse falls and all that type of thing, which you don't get on track, and you probably never will because it's all down to individual traders. Something there. But the other thing you mentioned is you talked about the Curragh trying to attract an audience from Dublin, which is fair enough, I suppose. But realistically, they need to attract an audience in the local community where I live.
Yeah.
And they don't get it. There's lads here that I know in the local pub. They'll go to Galway. They'll go to Punchestown. They even go to Naas. Some of them go to Leopardstown for Dublin racing festivals and everything else. They do not go to the Curragh. Now, maybe it's a national hunt thing. Most of the meetings they go to tend to be national hunt because they probably know the horses better and everything else. But even at that, the Curragh used to get great support locally years ago, but they've definitely lost that. That's the big thing that's lost. I think when you look at the size of some of the towns around here, the way that they've blossomed as commuter belt towns, such as Naas, Newbridge, Kildare, even Kilcullen, Sallins, all these places, there's lots of people living in those areas and they just don't go racing. That's the bottom line, certainly not for the Curragh anyway. Right, we'll move on. Next one, Hannah Smullen, you mentioned her earlier. That was fantastic to see her have a winner, and her mum, Frances Crowley, there as well. What about that, Johnny? Just on the fact that Pat Smullen, poor man, died of pancreatic cancer, but he did fantastic fundraising and awareness for that before he died. And it's still carrying on now with different legacy issues from it, with fundraising events that are happening in the Curragh particularly. But then you had Rob Burrow, the rugby league player from the UK. He died the other day from motor neuron disease, and he did unbelievable fundraising. Both him and his mates from the rugby did over the last couple of years for him and the awareness that they've got from motor neuron disease. And also involved in racing as well. They had horses and all running to fundraise for that. Terrible thing with Pat Smullen, but great to see his daughter Hannah.
Fantastic. Yeah, like motor neuron is, I mean, it's an Irish saying where you say when somebody passes, it's an ease to them or it's an ease to her. And motor neuron disease is very much in that bracket where the life gets so difficult. It's a shocking disease, like high rate of it in Ireland. Charlie Bird would have really moved the nation with his story. Colin Murray before me. I never forget being in the car with Johnny Mullen. I think we were going down to see a horse we had with Charles Burns. We're in the car and the phone rang and it was on loudspeaker, and Johnny put it on. It was Colin Murray, and I hadn't really heard from him in a while, and I couldn't get over his voice, how it had deteriorated, and how if this was a different person. And Johnny would have been very close to him, and it was very, very moving. Like, and the battle that people with Morton Urine has, staggering. Pancreatic cancer isn't far off in terms of the diagnosis. Sadly, Desi Hughes' death would have moved a lot of us in racing. He was very popular. Pat Smullen was on another level because of his age. The fundraising day he had at the Curragh was still one of my most memorable sporting events, most memorable life events. It was a really, really highly fueled day in terms of emotion, and the legends that were there for Pat Smullen, and the likes of Hamdan El Maktoum, and people who raised big money, and even people who raised small money by buying the Pat Smullen cups that I still see all over the place. The legacy lives on. Incredible. Hannah and Francis, I don't really know I'd have met Hannah a few times, and I know Francis reasonably well from meeting them. They're just really likeable people, and I do feel that Pat is still there in many respects. And Francis has this story about, I think it's a robin in the garden, that she believes was almost like a sign from Pat after he passed away. And I do think she gets great encouragement from his memory and from how people are still constantly talking about Pat Smullen. And it was a magic weekend. Like Josh Halford riding his first winner over fights for his dad, Jay Cohen first winner over fences, but particularly Hannah Smullen riding her first winner on the weekend that was in. It was magic, really. And I really wish her the best. I think she's like my missus. She's gone down a legal career, so unlike us plebs, she might have a future.
Yeah. And another one you didn't mention there for a great week was Paddy Hanlon, Shark Hanlon's son. He turned pro, and then 3 days later he rides a double in Limerick. You've had a lot of time down in Shark's place, Emma. You've met Paddy, I presume.
Yeah, he seems like a really nice young man, in fairness. And he obviously works hard at it. Like he seems pretty tall, so how long he'll get out of, I suppose, riding as a profession is probably a question. But he's making a pretty good go at it so far, and I was actually really impressed by him, to be honest. I remember him when he obviously had done a lot of pony racing. I think he won the Dingle Derby and stuff like that. Obviously got loads of experience as an amateur, but I thought he looked really, really polished now last week riding his winners. I think he's come on an awful lot in a very short space of time. And yeah, I'm just looking through his stats there quickly. He's had an awful lot of rides so far. Obviously, I think the vast majority for his dad, Shark. But yeah, to have two winners, I think 2 days after his 17th birthday, I think it was only his maybe third or fourth or fifth ride since turning professional. It was brilliant. And hopefully he can keep going for him. I met Shark down at Wexford. I was racing Wexford Wednesday evening. He didn't give me the tip for either now, so I might be on to him about that. But it was brilliant to see it. And I think like the public support for that stable, maybe you kind of driving it on a bit, but everyone seems to kind of get a good kick out of it. And long may it continue, because I think he looks like a pretty good rider.
Just on that, sorry, I obviously forgot Paddy, but I was talking to Shark about this on Sunday, and this is for another day now. We might have a proper debate on this down the line. But as we're walking away from the parade ring, it was before Paddy was riding Amir Bagatelle. It was his first ride over fences. He was saying, he was really saying to me, the pony racing circuit, it really, really needs to be maintained, like what it has done for this. He was really extolling the pony racing circuit. And a few days previously, I was talking to a relative of another young rider who had a completely different view. He was like, this jockey's kind of been, he was spared the pony racing because of the nature of it. So you had two completely different views in the space of a few days on pony racing, but it certainly met a lot of really good riders. And as Emma says, this lad's very promising, young Paddy.
Yeah, they're off to Sutton today. There's two runners over there today as well. It'll be worth watching if you get to see them before they're over. As I say, by the time this comes out, they'll probably have run. No doubt another winner for Shark somewhere. But anyway, moving on. The last thing, or the main thing, is a horse to follow from last week. Emma, you must have a good one.
Yeah, I thought I felt so bad for Kevin Coleman when Derry Lad was beaten on Friday in Epsom in the Nifty 50 handicap. God, I think he's poked her eyes out the last 2 times he's ran. He was really, really eye-catching and neat, and you just thought he might be plumb right for this one. And I don't think Hayley Turner really covers herself in glory now. It wasn't, definitely wasn't her finer day, but he's definitely a horse who seems to be maybe in the form of his life. And yeah, I'll definitely be following him where he goes next. It's pretty good to get it done on Friday, but no doubt he'll land another big one somewhere.
Yeah, That was a funny ride, all right. Should have won, I think. I'm going to give you two that ran in the one race. Enniskerry and 6.5. They finished first and second in an amateur race at Listowel on Sunday. First off, Enniskerry. It's only its 16th race for a 10-year-old, and Barry Connell was bullish about it beforehand. Told anyone who'd listened to him that the horse would not be beaten. Was really well backed and won very well. But I like the second as well, 6.5. Gavin Cromwell, 4-year-old filly. Ran off level weights with Enniskerry, which might turn out to be a very good performance down the line. And I think the two of them, there'd be ones to watch out for. Both probably run in the amateur race in Galway. I know that Enniskerry, they're also talking about this is Arrowich, might be one for the other horse too. But they're two to watch. And an interesting thing out of that race, just want to hear what you might think of this, is the fact that watching that race, the third horse in it, War Correspondent, it saddle slipped. So I saw on Sunday evening that it was in again on Monday in a handicap hurdle and thought it looked very well handicapped over hurdles off a rating of 114. So looked at the price and saw 25 to 1 the night before in the show with the bookmaker. So I thought, okay, I'll have something each way on that. They were going extra places, 4 places at 25 to 1's a round price. So had a bet in it and ended up having as much as they'd let me have on, which was 46 quid each way. So nearly 50 quid each way in it. And the next morning I wake up, the horse is 13 to 2. And I said, okay, I'll cash out. Went to cash out. They're only offering me €4.60 profit. So I said, I'm not taking that, hadn't I? So the next thing is the horse shortens again into 5, into 9 to 2, into 4. So by the time it was 4 to 1, I go and check back on the cash out, still €4.60. There was a time you could plan on making a few quid out of that. There was no chance here. So I had to stick with it, leave the bet on, which wasn't the intention originally. Fortunately, the horse finished in the places, so I got a few quid. But what about that, Johnny? Cash out, do you use it? Most people see it anyway.
I've used it in the past. If bookmakers would just be a little bit more willing to lay bets, punters have an amazing time with betting at the moment. Like as you mentioned earlier, Vinny, the offers and all of that, and the amount of markets, like it's incredible. Like you've literally billions of markets like available across different sports. It's incredible what they've done. A lot of it is obviously done by models and all of that, and it's not so much human intervention anymore. But it's amazing what bookmakers do. But I do feel of all the things that they've innovated on in recent years, cash out is absolute genius. Like I think it plays on human frailty. It plays on the fact that if you back 3 or 4 football teams and the last game is at 8 o'clock, the third game might have been over at 5 o'clock. You have 3 hours of absolute terror. Like, do I wait and hope that I might make a grand here, or do I cash out for 250, or just say for argument's sake? And you'll be asking mates oh, should I do this? Should I do that? Almost never should you cash out, by the way. But the odd cash out offer, I remember, I think it was when Presenting Percy won the RSA that year. I had backed him, and I think it was Manila Indo, but I backed one of if whatever it was one of Henry's horse, but I had him in an anti-post accumulator. And after a race at Leopardstown, I had a cash out offer that was really, really good, and I gladly accepted it. And sometimes it's brilliant. Now I don't really bet with with bookmakers online anymore. I haven't for a long time, and so I actually don't know what the cash out situation is. But in terms of the exchanges, it's a brilliant offer, and I do feel if it's done right by the sports books, it's actually an excellent offer, and it's a massive profit winner for the bookmakers as well, which tells you that punters basically they do like to lock in a profit. And I was surprised by your story, because I used to love backing a horse, thinking if you backed it at 6s. And another one as well was if you backed a horse with one bookmaker, I remember, and it was dead in the market, you could still cash out for a modest loss, 10%. And if you're backing a 6 to 1 shot that's 16s and it's 28 on the exchanges or whatever, you're getting a really good cash out at 90%. I don't know if that's gone as well, but I think cash out's a brilliant innovation, and I wish it was better than the example you described.
Yeah, but just the funny thing there is just men generally, we have different attitudes to things to women. So I was just wondering, with Emma, you bet, do you tend to take cash out? Was that something that would attract to you?
No, I think I'd be thinking too much of what I could lose out on if the horse won or the team won or whatever, for example. But very, very rarely, maybe if a horse is a massive drifter, I might cash out. Maybe the last leg of an accumulator and really didn't fancy the last one. But no, more often than not, I'd leave it go. I don't think I've ever landed a really big accumulator, so I haven't been in the situation too often, unfortunately. But I think probably people warn you enough not to cash out. I think I'd probably just let it ride 90% of the time, I'd say.
All right, Johnny, give us one we're not going to cash out from. Your horse to follow.
The lastly on the cash out, like, it can be manipulated by punters. So like I'm a punter, but like I will defend bookmakers, and like I know that there would be instances where they'd be like, particularly if a horse were scratched as well, if you like non-runners in races, it can get very, very messy. So I defend bookmakers on this one. The horse I'm going to give, at this time of year, lads, I hope Emma will be down. We'll have a bit of crack in Galway, but good thoughts do turn to Galway, particularly from my perspective this time of year. There was a winner the other day at Tremor for Willie Mullins. He's a wooden Basset horse, and he'd actually, something went awry when he made his Irish debut in Galway last year, and then he did his pelvis at home. I don't remember the name of the syndicate, but I was chatting to one of the syndicate after the horse won in Tremor, and next thing, this lad came over from Galway, and like he was absolutely wired. He said, and like, Galway, this, he goes, I was bailing here with the young lad here, and we were rushing to make the races. And he goes, you're from Galway, you know what it means? I was like, geez, I do actually. I'd love to win in Galway. That's not the horse I'm going to give, but I think he might run in the Galway hurdle, and that's Mano Work for Paul Fahey. And I was reporting at Tipperary on Wednesday. There are a couple of horses I could have given. Aidan had a horse by Saxon Murray that was quite impressive. But Mano Work ran his first one since September, actually, when he won a big race at Listowel. The race he won at Listowel, he was rated 125, so it was a good hurdle race. Of 100 grand, actually. And I'm just seeing today now he got £8 for that. The reason I say that is the Galway hurdle is so good now. A mark of 133 wouldn't certainly get to win, but I imagine he's a reasonable chance of getting in. But he made his comeback in what looked a pretty decent maiden. The only kind of horse that invention that was very disappointing. So that's the one caveat. But Himalayan Heights won the race. It'd be a solid horse, like I'd say 90 odd rated horse, probably ability wise. Colin King got it fairly soft on the front end, but Keane Cullinan, who rode the horse for Paul Fahey, he'd had actually very few rides on the flat. I was kind of looking at him pre-racing, and Keane then he had a winner at Tremor actually a couple of days later. He's Williams ride for Helen Markham, and his little boy was in the parade with Keane. I think he's only a few months old, and he was there to greet him. But Keane rode this horse, and I thought he didn't batter the life out of him, if that makes sense. Like, he kind of accepted when his chance was gone. But watch the way he travelled in the race. Like, it was really, really eye-catching. He had to come from the rear against Colin Keane ridden front runner who had it very soft. And for me, a furlong down, I was like, this horse is going to win. And in the betting, he was sent off at a price that would imply that I think he would need to run a little bit. He was sent off 10-1, having been short in the morning. It was a very, very eye-catching run. I'd love to see him wrap up in the Galway hurdle off what would more or less be a featherweight, and there'd be plenty of interest around him. He was ridden actually by Keane at Listowel last year as well. So I'd say Keane would be absolutely blessed to have an association with this horse. He's a good rider, very likeable lad, and I'd love to see him win the Galway hurdle on this fella.
This would be great for Paul Fahey. He had a bit of bad news there recently where he had a fire in his house at home. So he could pay for that with a Galway winner, no doubt about it. Anyway, look, that's us for now. We'll be back next Monday, the normal slot on the Monday, no bank holiday. And we'll discuss all that happens this week. So if you are having a bet, do gamble responsibly. And make sure, if you haven't already, to subscribe to our channel. See you all again next week. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.